This is the Anything But Banker to Broker podcast. We're going to be talking to some of the industry's best and brightest about the unique pathways they took before stepping into broking and how it set them up for success. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, so today's guest has probably gone through one of the most unique but also, I guess, lateral and sensical changes in their career, going from studying to be a rabbi for a year, then to being actually a broker. So we've got Shimon on today. How are you getting on?
I'm having a great time here from California, actually, now with my family. I'm very excited to speak with you and to, I guess, share my story with other people interested in finance as well. So, yeah, that's why I'm here at this interview, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to your wife as well, because she actually reached out to me to say, look, she was really liking what I was doing and that she thinks that it'd be good to speak to you. She's obviously also the reason you're over in LA at the moment. So yeah, just give me a bit of background there.
Yeah, so my wife, she's from California. We met here in California now 11 years back, and we ended up moving together to Australia, and we had quite a journey together, and we just came down to visit for a short trip, and we should be back soon.
Yeah,
But I guess we can go through that later on in the interview.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, what's keeping you busy over there? You guys visiting family? Like, are you doing some sightseeing
So
as well?
my wife is one of 7 kids, so she has quite a lot of family. Some of them have their own children at this point. She has a grandma here, the nice Persian Libyan family. Her father's Persian, her mother's Libyan. They live in LA. There's a big Persian community here in Los Angeles. Great kebab, great food. And we have a nice, fun, bubbly family. Everyone and my kids are playing with their cousins, and it's really nice to visit. When we can, we usually come about once a year. And the hours actually work really good for Australia. So when I visit here, 9 to 5 becomes 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So I really don't have to worry about looking at my emails, phone till 3 p.m. And then 3 p.m. I get down to work. So I actually love the hours and everything when I have a chance to visit.
Would you ever consider moving there? Because it sounds like, I mean, I suppose being away from your clients and the base of people would make it hard, right? But I can imagine it'd be tempting.
It is something I've considered over the past few years. I was here for 6 months during COVID, and it worked out okay. I do have some elderly clients who would find it hard to use completely online, even though I should say the vast majority of my clients now, let's say below the age of 60, don't really have an issue using the internet. I don't meet all my clients in person now, even though I do know the majority of them. But yeah, that's it is something that I've thought about over the years, especially when I was here for 6 months during COVID, maybe just stay here. There was no lockdowns at the time, so coming from Victoria was quite exciting. And there was some closures, mainly of small businesses, but it didn't really affect day-to-day life like it did in Victoria.
Are you part of a big family here in Melbourne as well? Like, do your kids have,
Yes.
I guess, that many cousins and people to,
Yeah, it's quite a lot. I'm one of 9 kids. I'm the middle child, the fifth and middle child. So my kids have a lot of cousins, probably imagine. My grandfather came after World War II, which was a bit of an interesting story in itself. He was one of the few Jewish families that managed to come with a whole family of 4 brothers. They managed to escape from the Hitler side of Poland to the Stalin side of Poland, which was slightly better, not completely better, because after escaping there, they were forced to the gulags, where they had to work. Well, he was 34 at the time, which is actually how old I am right now. But he was working 18 hours a day with 1 slice of bread. So he was killed by Stalin. But at least his wife and 4 kids survived, and they all came together to Australia. So now, almost 80 years later, there's a lot of, cousins, first cousins, second cousins. Yes, it's a very big family. It's exciting. Sometimes a little bit difficult to take care of everything, but I've only got 4 kids myself, so I'm okay. But yeah, that's the situation.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Well, it seems like, despite the situation, hard work is in the blood of everyone that has moved from over here and started to build their family and build their life.
Yeah, I should say I'm not the only Shimon Shmerling who's a mortgage broker. I have a cousin. Well, he goes by the name Simon, which is pretty much the same name. Yeah, so we're both mortgage brokers. I've had calls from ASIC actually regarding people, and I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. And it turns out to be my cousin's clients. And so there is sometimes that I've had it with banks as well when applying for broker codes that they've said he's 10 years older than me. So they said they've already given a broker code out, but it wasn't to me. Yeah, so yeah, it's just one of the things about having a cousin in the same industry, same name.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, when I was doing my research before I sent you over the emails and stuff for this podcast, I remember seeing a picture of him and a picture of you, and I was like, hang on a minute, who's the guy? Luckily, on your business's website, your wife is on there as well, and I was like, okay, I got the
Oh,
right
you
guy.
remember the
I
yeah, she's
remembered.
been great.
So yeah, so she's working in your business. I think she's operations manager.
Yes, she was a big part. So should I go through my story now just to explain a bit the
Yeah, let's do it.
yeah.
I'd love to talk about you, obviously your childhood and what led you up to that point where you were, looking at studying to become a rabbi.
Yeah, so I mean, I went to a local religious school near my house in St Kilda East as a child, but it's actually they have a very good education, both Hebrew and also regular education. So they study religious texts till lunchtime, which is 12:30. Then 1 to 4 is English, math, science. But even those few hours, there's a big emphasis on getting very good marks. There was a certain notion that that would attract more kids to the school. So they do get like tops in the state, always like in the top 20, which is quite amazing. They only spend a few hours a day doing it. So I was in that school. I was doing well. I should say not very well in English, but I was always a bit of a math brain. My grandfather, I mentioned before, who spent a few years in Russia under Stalin, he was quite a bit of a chess player, like a local chess champion. Never made it to the big stage, but he was really good at chess, very mathematical, logical. I kind of inherited that. My father was like that, is like that as well. So I was always good at those kind of things like math, chess. But then when I was 14 in year nine, after year nine, I dropped out completely just because I really wanted to learn as much as I can religious texts. And I spent the next 10 years of my life just doing that very long hours. Even though I've spent 10 years, I feel like I just scratched the surface. There's a lot to learn. And I wasn't really trying to get anything from it. I just thought that was important at the time. So I would just study basically full time. Sometimes I play a little bit of sport or whatever it was. But back then, I didn't have a smartphone. Even when iPhones came out, I didn't get one for years later. And we just basically woke up, studied most of the day, went to sleep. I should say also it was a male only school, so there was very little distractions in in that part, like what you'd expect from a co-ed school. And that's how it was all the way from 14, just studying religious texts pretty much all day, from wake up till sleep.
And when was the pivot, or when did you think you wanted to get into finance? Because obviously we spoke about studying for 10 years. There was 1 year where you was a junior rabbi. So what did that year look like?
So yeah, I studied and I thought, this is what I was just doing. And when I was like a rabbi, I was like a junior rabbi at a synagogue. The synagogue is actually, some people might know Diamond Joe. He was the leader of the Demons for a few years back in the days when he was a billionaire. So he has like a synagogue in St Kilda East. A very nice guy. He's actually he was working for a while to try and do something in Tasmania, make a team there. He moved to Tasmania now. So I was there, but I realized I was not needed so much in the community um, for religion. Everyone there is pretty much religious anyways. A lot of people can study a lot better than I can. I was people a lot older than me, double my age at the time, and I was in my young 20s. And I realized there was a big need to understand finance. A lot of people had a lot of financial issues. It comes with the fact that everyone is forced into private education. So in the general like average Australian, unless you're doing well, a lot of people won't even consider it. But if someone is religious, it's kind of like a necessity as opposed to a luxury. It becomes a necessity. So there's a lot of people like drowning in debt, didn't understand how to save money. And the number one biggest expense for the average guy living in Eastern Kilda Caulfield was the mortgage. And I have an older brother, and I saw that was always the big expense. Like obviously there's other expenses, but the number one biggest one was mortgage. So I figured if I can help tackle that, that would help the community a lot. And at the time, there was no other guys doing it. Since I started, I should say, I think 5 or 6 younger guys started as well, but I kind of broke the ice. So people used to get a mortgage from the bank, and sometimes they get a good deal, sometimes not such a good deal. And they would just stay there and they wouldn't even know, like, ask on what interest rate you're on, they would have no idea. And that was the number one biggest expense. And then it became hard to, pay for other things to give their kids a good life. And I want to tell people. And one of the things that comes out about helping other people. I remember as a young child, I was one time sitting down on my seat and I had a large book in front of me. It was a prayer book. And my dad said, don't put it like resting on the wood because it'll go into the guy in front's back, the way we sat like one row behind the other. And he's like, you always got to be thinking about the other guy, how to help the other guy. And I always, like my grandfather also, he was always into trying to help other people. He lived his life that way, even though he wasn't like hardcore religious, but he always tried to do whatever he can, and he really did. He would go the extra mile to help every single person. So that was a big thing. My wife really pushed me as well. She said, you got to do what's important, and it's good for everybody. It's also be good for your family. And I started to get into finance. At the beginning, it was quite hard. I actually got a PAYG job as a mortgage broker, which paid very, very little. But then, eventually started our own business, and I have very, very little money at the time. I remember I think I had a few $1,000s in my bank, took every dollar I had, started a small business, and just grew from there. And at the time, I only had one baby, but this business allowed me, now I have 4 kids, and it allowed me to buy a house, even though I've got a big mortgage myself, which is not super pleasant, but at least it allowed me to do that. It allowed me to help hundreds of people. And, I walk down the street and I see different people who I've helped in a major way. And sometimes it's not a huge, sometimes it's just about saving someone a few $1,000s. Other times it's about getting people in the property market, about saving a lot of money. I've had people with very high interest loans going to just a regular mortgage, and some people had no idea they could do that, especially self-employed, which a lot of my clients are self-employed, and sometimes tricky situation. There's all different kinds of policies with different banks. So I'm very into like that, looking at the policy, see how can I help every person, especially people that are paying 10, 11, 12% interest, and then going to like 5, 6%, which that is like incredible. Getting someone into their first home is incredible, or their first investment. Sometimes people buy an investment for their kids and they set up life for their kids, which is great. So that's kind of been my journey. It's about what I'm needed for. And I found this is something that I'm good at, something that I can genuinely help hundreds of people. And I've just grown naturally. Like I haven't done pretty much any advertising outside Google or any of that. It's just been basically word of mouth, starting with a few guys, close family and friends, and it's kind of mushroomed out over the past 9 years. And I do want to grow more, but it's been really remarkable, I guess, the growth and the story going from really nothing to helping hundreds of people. And these are the people that I see all the time as well.
Well, I was going to say this. It sounds like you've become a real pillar of the community, right? And your granddad's family moved over here just after World War II, so it's not as if they're fresh into the country. It's new.
No.
Why do you think that you were one of, or if the first broker in the community? What do you think that? Yeah, I guess what's your reasoning behind that?
At the time, the word mortgage broker barely existed. If you would have asked me when I was 18, what is a mortgage broker, I wouldn't know the answer to that question, because it was always you go to the bank. I remember even when my parents went to buy, you know, went to buy a house or they were paying the mortgage. It was always about, you go to the bank and you ask them for a loan. I didn't know there was a concept of a middleman at all. There was some bankers, like local bankers. I should say there used to be, like in Eastern Kilda, the main shopping street is called Carlisle Street. It used to actually have banks. Now there's no banks there. They closed down every single one. I think CBA was the last one standing, but eventually they gave in too. So there used to be more of a connection, I think, with the banks, with the community. And that was a thing. You just go to the bank and the bank takes care of you. Everyone says, like, I've got my guy in the bank. And it wasn't like I have my mortgage broker. And then I realized that there's actually a lot of people paying a lot of money. And it started with my older brother. I saw he was paying, quite high interest. I was doing a bit of research and I realized, he could be saving a lot of money. And then I realized this concept of a mortgage broker. I should say, I knew I'd be doing something in finance. So even when I had this rabbi job, I was studying a master's in finance, but that's quite a broad thing to study. So finance, I was thinking maybe I'll work in the bank. That was my initial thought. I'll become a banker. But then I realized if I work for a specific bank, I'm very limited. Here I can do my own business, help whoever I can. And it's been a great journey they're basically something that I've never heard of. Definitely not growing up. I think in general in Australia, not just my community, 30 years ago, there was almost no brokers. And now over 70% of mortgages go through brokers. There has been a big shift, I would say, in the entire country. It went from almost zero to the vast majority in just 30-year period, which is incredible. It's been very fast growth. I think people want to save as much as they can, especially now when things are so expensive, especially post-COVID when things went really expensive. I think back then it was easier, even though, they'll say the boomers will tell you that we had to pay 18% interest. But if you do the math, even with the 18% interest on a $20,000 loan, it's still a lot easier than a $2 million loan, even at a low interest, because the principal is the main thing at that level. So I'm not saying they had it easy, but the mortgage has definitely gone up a lot, even relative to income or relative to anything else. Yeah, so that
So
was the main thing.
going back to, obviously, you're the middle child, right? So you're the fifth child, is that right?
This child,
Yeah?
yeah, my parents had
Right,
9 kids. It was a
right.
bit
I had nine
chaotic
kids.
as a child.
Well, I was gonna say, right, so you must have a lot of older siblings that you've seen grow up and go off and do different things, and also your parents as well. So obviously your parents had a lot of mouths to feed. What did they
Yeah.
do for work, and what did you also see your older siblings growing up and doing?
A bit interesting. My father actually, when he finished school, he went to be a doctor actually, and he studied, and he had 1 year left, I believe, to finish the course. And then his plan was to be a doctor. He had a private audience with his rabbi. He lived in Brooklyn, New York. His name was the Rebbe or the Lubavitch Rebbe. And he said he was needed for something else to actually be a teacher. There was very few teachers at the time, religious teachers, Jewish teachers in Melbourne. This was in the 80s. And so he dropped out of university and he became a teacher, which meant that it was probably harder to feed those 9 mouths. I assume if he would have became a doctor, but that's what he decided to do. And he has zero regrets from dropping out from being a doctor to become a teacher. So that's what he did. My older brother, does property management. So he's quite a bit into property, but he only started after I became a mortgage broker. Yeah. My older sister's a teacher, and I have another one who did different social work, helping kids. She even worked in a youth jail. So she also had quite a few interesting jobs. But I always knew that, yeah, like I always loved numbers and stuff. So I thought if I ever was to get a job, it'll probably be something finance related. And this was, I thought, within finance related, it was the best thing. One other thing which I found really incredible about it was one of the few industries that I don't need to ask someone for their credit card. And like during a cost of living crisis, let's say I have a friend selling cars or selling watches. Now, if you sell a car for $50,000 and you believe that it's a fair, good deal, but you're still taking $50,000 out of someone else's pocket, even though it's fair and the car's valued at $50,000, at the end of the day, you're still costing someone 50,000. But for me, I'm giving them good service and I'm doing it for free, and I'm helping people every day of the week. And I was actually thinking just today, I have a settlements. One lady, she's an old lady who would not be able to go to a bank and negotiate for herself. She's an old lady. Her husband passed away many years back, and she inherited a bunch of properties. And I was able to help her and saving significant amount of money. Like we're talking tens of thousands of dollars a year cheaper than what she had from her previous bank. And at the same time, I have a young guy who's buying a 2 bedroom unit, and he grew up with his single mom. And we had an incredible story. I should just say briefly about it. They bought a property. It was about $800,000. And the mum said, she'll be able to give a small gift towards the purchase. And she actually, when it came to the purchase, she pulled out a check and she wrote the entire 10%, which was 80,000. They said, "Mom, where are you getting this money from?" And she said that she actually, for many years, she had a secret trust fund for this daughter, and now they've got $80,000. She'd chip in 10, $20 a week for many years, over 20 years, and she was able to get her daughter into the property ladder, which is actually settling in about an hour. So they should remain nameless, but it was just an incredible story that, to see a young person have that, single mom who really cared about for many, many years and didn't just give them cash, but kept it a secret and managed to get a daughter into the property ladder. And yeah, these kind of things, just incredible. I'm very lucky to see these things.
I mean, you must see
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff like that pretty much every day, right? So, like, I think from the conversation we had off camera and everything, the context you've given me in your life early, like, it seems that the studies that you were doing into your faith and, obviously investing a lot of time into that, what you've taken away from that and applied as the biggest principle is the morality behind it and the human, I guess, the human element behind it. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of parts to it. So a lot of it is about just helping somebody else is a central pillar. It was actually one story from over 2,000 years ago. There was a sage, his name was Hillel, and someone asked this rabbi, says, "If you want to tell me the entire religion just standing on one foot in a few seconds, what will you say?" And he said, "Don't do unto others what you wouldn't want done to yourself." And helping other people is probably the number one most important thing. Of course, there's a whole lot of text and everything else, Yeah, if you strip it down back to basics, I would say that's probably the number one most important thing. Obviously, there's different things you got to do at different times, and morality is a big thing people talk about, especially these days. What does it mean to be a moral person? But that's probably the number one thing. I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do in different situations. At the end of the day, try and help as much people as you can, and each their own. Everyone tries to do their part, and I've seen it as well. I get to see people's finance, and I've had some really nice surprises. Including, I had one client who he had an he's a middle class guy, not wealthy at all. I would say lower middle class. His sister was a single mom struggling, and he would pay off the remainder of her credit card bill every single month. Whatever she couldn't afford, sometimes it was $200, sometimes $500, but just to make sure that she never gets into credit card debt every single month. So seeing something small like that, but in a consistent way, that was very inspirational thing for me. And I see a lot of kindness that people have that nobody talks about. Quiet kindness. As a broker, I'm able to see that, and it really makes my day. Obviously, I can't tell anyone any names or anything, but it's exciting to see. And I think if someone is a religious person, which I try to do, I should say, in Judaism, 613 commandments. It's quite hard to keep all of them all the time. Yeah, I'm no longer a practicing rabbi, but I still try and keep all the commandments, which is quite a difficult thing to do, but try and do as much as I can. But yeah, if
They,
you
and
want
it's
to
one of those
break the
things.
yeah,
If you
sorry.
help your neighbor, if you help your neighbor, the neighbor helps their neighbor. At some point, it comes back around to you, right? Like,
Yeah, it's not why I do it, but it's definitely there is that circular economy. I'll tell you, like even myself, obviously, I will shop at Coles and other places, but if I could go to my local fruit shop, I will. And I should say, like, I'll go to my local fruit shop, but then my local fruit shop guy, he'll talk to me. The guy in Coles is not talking to you, and he'll say, "What do you do?" He's like, "Oh, you're a mortgage broker." Okay, I've actually got a mortgage, and then we'll start talking, and I'll buy fruit from him every week, and he'll get a mortgage from me, and then I'll do the same thing with a butcher, and I'll do the same thing with everyone else, and even something like rubbish removal. Doesn't matter what it is, but I always try and go local if I can. Obviously, it's not always possible, but yeah, as much as possible, I try and help people, especially if I know somebody needs it. Even if it costs me an extra buck or two, as long as it's something affordable, I'll try and they usually would be affordable. I mean, they can't always compete with Coles. So you pay a few cents more for your apples, but I mean, they're trying to be competitive as well. They don't, so as long as it's something that you can do, not saying do it every time, but as much as possible, I try and support local businesses. I understand also as a small business owner how important it is because they're not getting a paycheck at the end of the fortnight. They have to pay their staff, but nobody's paying them. So
yeah,
sometimes they might earn even less than their staff. I'm happy staff have rights and I'm happy there's a minimum wage, but sometimes the owner actually gets less than minimum wage. They're sometimes working 14 hours a day, working all day, and they walk away after all expenses with very high rental expenses, goings, paying all the staff, paying all the superannuation, paying cost of sales. They might walk away less than minimum wage at the end of the day. So that's why I try and support them when I can.
beautiful. Now, when it comes to you stepping from obviously your 1 year studies and getting into finance, was that a pullback from your faith in a way, or I guess was it just you pivoting and doing something else? Because you said there's obviously
It's a really good
600 plus
question.
commandments, right? It's hard
Yeah.
to try and follow them as much as anyone, a practicing man, would love to.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. So when I was like, I would study for many, many years. And then I did 1 year as like a job working as a junior rabbi. And then when I stopped that, it was an interesting feeling. Like at the beginning, it was the first time in my life kind of moving away from all that and just joining, I would say, the workforce. And it was a bit of a shock to the system at the beginning, but I didn't leave the religion. I just left being a rabbi. So, you know what? In certain ways, I felt even closer. In certain ways, when you see real life, how real life works, you see all, the good, or not everything is good, but you see a lot of good. And in certain ways, I felt closer. Obviously, I wouldn't necessarily have as much time as I had before. So I used to study a lot, a lot. But I'll still, when I can, I'll have, pull out books. Even in my house, I'll have hundreds of books and try and study as much as I can. And it is hard during the week. I just kind of juggle a lot. I got, between my own four children, between my business, going drop off. It probably didn't help that my wife had a PAYG job. So like she would have to leave early. I'd be dropping the kids off at different schools. I have less time, but I try and make up for as much as I can during the weekend, especially Saturday. Like we don't use any electricity, we don't drive, we don't have mobile phones. I try and study as much as I can, just those 24 hours. It's like from Friday afternoon sunset till Saturday night. Try and get as much as I can in then. But yeah, there's definitely a lot less hours quantity wise, but the quality I try and make up for it as much as possible.
So you
But
are
yeah,
very
zero.
you adhere to the Shabbat on the Saturday. That's fair to say.
Yeah, that Sabbath, Shabbat. Yeah, I do
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah. I keep.
and I know a lot of brokers will end up working on Saturdays, right? As is the nature of the job. Do you deal with a lot of people in your community? So I mean, there's that foregone knowledge that if something needs doing, it's probably going to be picked up on Sunday rather than Saturday.
Yeah. So, well, not all my clients are Jewish, but they know that I am. So if I do get a
They
call, I
respect it.
wouldn't know about it because my phone's on airplane mode. So I wouldn't know till after Saturday. But yeah, I mean, it's not like a question, should I answer the phone or not? I just don't have a phone with
The
me. So
phone's not answerable. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
gone. Sometimes I even forget where I put it on Friday afternoon. I think mentally it's good. I think for my family it's good, besides it being one of the biblical commandments. But yeah, they don't call me, and if they would, like even some of my clients just from the general Australian community, I'll call them back Saturday night or Sunday morning. But yeah, those are my 24 hours. Nobody could reach me.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
anyone outside of Judaism now they're starting to call it like a screen fast, like a tech
extreme fast.
fast.
So I think Charlie
I
Kirk would refer to something like that.
I wish I could do
Uh,
it, mate. I find it extremely
yeah.
hard, but
Oh, look,
I
you
can
don't
see
have
like
to do it if you want. Try for a few hours. Doesn't have to be full 24. But yeah, I do it. I think for my kids, it's really good because I do. I sometimes feel guilty that I don't spend as much time with them as I would like to. But I try and do what I can. I mean, sometimes I'll be in the park with my kid and I'll be pushing him on the swing while I'm on the phone, and then on my other hand, I'm pushing. And one time, actually, I was on the phone and I'm pushing my kid, and the client, who's a local guy, walks past the park and he sees me. He's like, "Hey, Shimon, what's going on?" We were just on the phone talking about his mortgage, and he cracked up laughing. He was from overseas. He said, "My last house that I bought overseas, it was actually in Israel." He's like, "I had to travel to Tel Aviv, and I had a meeting with a bunch of guys in suits, and then had another meeting and another meeting. I got the house." He's like, "You're just talking to me in the park, and you got me a mortgage." It got approved. He bought his house. So he was happy, but he cracked up laughing. That's what I'll do sometimes. Sometimes if I have some time and I have a bunch of phone calls I'll make, I'll do it with my kid, even though I'm not able to talk to my kid then because I'm on the phone. But at least I have that limited, time together, pushing him on a swing. If I can't be talking or singing to him at the same time, at least I get something. So I make do what I can during the week as much as I can. I'll sometimes take them to like indoor play centers and play with them. And I usually have phone calls. I'm on the phone a lot. As a broker, I'm on the phone, probably phone calls 4 or 5 hours a day, calling clients, calling BDMs, calling banks. A lot of my clients also not vanilla deals, and I'm happy when I get a vanilla deal, but even more in a way when it's not vanilla to try and do what I can to help. And yeah, it's not easy, but I push them all through, and I'm happy to say that not one client has ever lost a deposit in 9 years. And I always tell clients I want to keep it that way. So there's a lot of fighting with the banks to get them approved. Sometimes I have to reapply to a second bank, but I don't want to let anybody down. Do whatever I can to make it work.
sure,
And
and long
yeah,
may that continue as well. Long may it continue. But yeah, so I was going to ask you. So growing up in a household with so many children, like, have they all
yeah.
gone off and done completely different things, like in terms of their work, or are they kind of working in similar fields to you? I know you got a teacher.
No,
You
well,
got
they're kind of all over the place. We have nine of them.
yeah,
Some of
yeah.
them are evolving as well. So my older brother, he does property management, like owners corporation. Then I have one that's a teacher, one that does works with kids. As I said, she used to work in a jail, but she does social work, which you can imagine Victorian jails aren't such a good place to work at. Especially like when you say kids, you think of kids, but it could be a 6'3", 17-year-old big guy, in
Yeah,
the jail who's in there not for good things. But sometimes that happens with kids. Then I have, yeah, someone in different professions, taking care of elderly, and some, yeah, one of my young brothers is actually a teacher. One's a bit of, a bit into art. So it's kind of all over the place between the nine of us. Uh, also some of them live in different countries between Australia, America, Israel. So yeah, we're all over the place, but it's
keeps
good.
you
We're,
busy.
we're a big happy family. We all get along, and That's the most important thing I would say.
Well, that is the most important thing. You're right, mate.
Yeah.
So you said you want to grow the business, right? What does that look like for you?
So I'll tell you, till now it's been mainly organic growth,
Hmm.
and I think that's been good. But I want to take it to the next level now. I know the policies well. I've been working many years in the industry, made a lot of connections. I want to just reach out to people, and I've been trying to recently grow the amount of people I have sending me clients, and it's really about just introducing me. I'm not trying to sell anything. So it could be accountants, could be financial planners. Just say, hey, I want to introduce you to Shimon. He's going to be able to help you. We'll work together, and they already have the trust with those people. And I think when you can transfer trust and then they see that the deal comes through to someone I've never seen before, and I speak to them, but they know somebody who knows me, and that trust is transferred and they have a good experience, then that again helps them, helps me. So I'm trying to grow as much as I can through I guess centers of influence, they call it center of influence. So it could be an accountant, could be a financial planner, could be I'm in connection with also some lenders, especially high interest lenders. They usually have short terms, 1 or 2 years. When that's over, they got to repay the loan. So if I can help those guys, which I mentioned also before, going from 12% to 6%, that is really awesome. And I've done that many times. So yeah, those lenders, I'm in contact with a lot of them. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to grow at this point. Instead of just people that I know, because the majority of my clients now, a lot of them, either I know them or their family since I was a kid. But then, recently I've been able to grow it. And I want to continue that trajectory, not to forget about my people, my pre-existing clients, which is already hundreds of pre-existing clients over the past 9 years. So I don't want to leave anyone behind, but I want to grow, looking to employ more. I have people working for me already, but I want to, at this point, grow the business. That's one of my big goals over the next, I would say, 6 months. I want to move really fast with that.
And you spoke about it before. Your kids see you working a lot, and I don't think you should beat yourself up about it because every broker is working a lot, every parent's
Yeah.
working a lot, right? Like times are tough these days, as we know. Um, I guess as a vehicle for you growing the business outside of this organic lead flow that you've got from clients, community, and people that you work with, I guess what does it look like in terms of how it gives you time back in your day when you're growing the business out? Have you thought about it from that perspective?
Yeah, so I think if I have full-time staff on the ground, I'll be able to buy back my time. As I've read a book recently, Buy Back Your Time. I think that's important. I think even my first time when I got someone working full-time, a full-time secretary, that was a big thing for me. That allowed me to do a lot of things. Before I had full-time work, I used to just sometimes pay per file, get someone a few hours here, a few hours there. But then I realized, if I want to actually be a present father, I'm going to have to get full-time help. So I have someone now working for me, full-time secretary, does a lot of the work for me, a lot of the paperwork. So I'm still meeting all my clients. I'm still on the phone with all my clients, speaking with banks. But that took 8 hours a day off my shoulders, which was great. But then business grows and you got to grow with it. But eventually I would like to just be the initial conversation and making sure everything is smooth in between, all the way to settlement. But yeah, do less, I guess, arguing with banks, even though I do enjoy that. And yeah, spend more time with family would be great, and growing the business. I think also I owe it to them. I would like to, kind of like this single mom that I mentioned earlier, to have trust accounts for all four of my kids, which as of now I'm guilty. I don't have any trust accounts for them. So I would like to grow that way. I would like to do what's right with them, right for myself, for the people, for the community, for my existing clients, and for new clients. Do what's right for everybody, which would include growing the business and having more time. So I really want to do both. Kind of work smarter instead of working harder, and buy back my time, grow the business, and do what's right. Yeah, for my family and everyone else's family.
Mate, I've got a question for you, right? So, if you were to look at somebody else who was walking the same path as you, they're maybe not considering becoming a rabbi, they're not doing it for that reason, but they're just really dedicating themselves to the spirituality and the religion of it, and that's why they're studying really because they want to, I guess, commit themselves. Like, and then they find themselves at a crossroads where they go, do you know what? Maybe they're looking up like you did and go, there's guys that have been doing this for 30 years that are a bit older than me that I want to do something else. What would your advice be to that person?
I would say do what's instead of looking, what's best or what's not best, think about what's needed. What are you needed for? Instead of saying like some people say, I need this, I need that. What are you needed for? So wherever you are, I don't know where you are right now, but think about that for a minute. put yourself like look from a bird's eye perspective and say, what are you needed for right now? What can you do to help? And if you're needed for spiritual guidance, then you could stay in that path. And I would recommend saying that. Like in my father's situation, there's a city with tens of thousands of doctors. We don't necessarily need one more. But he was needed to be a teacher. But if there's a million teachers and you're not needed for that, then do what you're needed for. I would say, yeah, look at it from bird's eye perspective. It's hard to do it by yourself. Speak to someone that you trust who can advise you, life coach and a spiritual advisor, someone that can really advise you. What are you needed for right now? Whatever city you happen to live in, or God made you live in this city for whatever reason, it is what it is. And what are you needed for? And that's a big thing. I thought for myself, we don't need another rabbi in Melbourne. Anyone walks around St Kilda, so if you go down Gleneye Road in Riponlea, you'll see plenty of them. One more was not needed, but I do have friends who went to places that were needed. Just my own immediate friends. I had one who moved to Cairns up north, and he's the only rabbi in the whole city. So he is absolutely needed there. They have a lot of mortgage brokers, but he has a beautiful, religious place to worship. He helps all the people there. So he was needed there. I have another friend moved to Iceland, and again, he's the only rabbi in the whole Iceland. Does amazing work there. So it's really, what are you needed for? So it doesn't really matter what it is, but you should, whatever, every single person should do something they're needed for. And I see you, Joe, you're helping get talent in finance. That was, you mentioned that's something you needed for. You probably could have found something else, but it's really about what you were needed for. So you find your calling. Every single person, I think, if you really think, you speak to someone else, you'll find the calling that you really think, I am needed for A, B, and C, and I am not needed for D, E, and F. And that's just how it is. Do what you needed. And if you're not needed, there's no point. If there's 100 doctors and they don't need another doctor, then don't be a doctor. But if there's a lack of doctors, and there is a lack of doctors in many areas, or special kind of doctors, maybe child doctor, or, you know, one friend is brain surgeons, not a lot of brain surgeons in Australia. So then that was needed. So yeah, do something that you needed for. Help as much as you can.
That's a very good answer, to be honest. I would expect that of a man who's dedicated the early parts of his life to reading and studying. And it sounds like I might have paid you there. I just want to say I haven't, but going into what you were saying, I get it, because I did a bird's eye view. I wanted to be a mortgage broker. I looked and I said, there's how many? 20,000 plus?
Yes,
They're
it
not
keeps
needed.
growing.
Right. They're not as needed as what I was doing.
Right.
And that's why I started this business, because I did look around and say, Jesus, this is needed. This is actually needed. Whether people see it straight away at first value, whether people see the value in it at all, it's needed. It is a needed thing. So yeah, I think that's a really fair answer as to why someone would stand at that fork in the road and choose what I guess is better for them, because it's what's
Right.
needed.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing.
So look, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this with me, Shimon. We'll have to have a coffee when you get back down to Melbourne.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be
definitely will.
rushing. I wouldn't be rushing back anytime soon, though. It's not very nice and warm at the moment, and you're over in probably one of the nicest climatized places in the world.
I got a bit of a tan the last month of here, but I'll be back next week.
Yeah. Oh, so you've been there for a month, have you?
Yeah, just a month, yeah. We
Yeah. Oh,
also
that's
had
nice.
we kind of have like a Jewish New Year, which kind of extends for a few weeks. It's not really as long as the Chinese New Year, but it stops and starts. We have festival time. So anyways, I couldn't work for quite a bit of the past month. So yeah, that was good. I'll be back next week.
Sounds good. Well, look, thank you again for doing this, mate. You shared some really valuable stuff, and I look forward to meeting you properly. All right.
Thank you very much, Joe. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
we'll meet soon.
We'll meet soon. Goodbye. See
Thank
ya.
you so much. See you.